Hi, my name is Zach Weiss. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I'm very excited to be having a talk today with my buddy Eric Wen. He is a content creator, a personality specialist, however you want to define yourself. We'll get there. How would you like to define yourself, by the way?
Yeah, I'm YouTube's. I do personality type teaching and analysis on YouTube and also off YouTube.
And I met him a long time ago when his channel was pretty small, and now it's blown up to around 60,000 subscribers, and he has a beautiful community of his
Yeah.
own. And I'm very, very excited to be chatting with him. And today we're going to be talking about how your personality type can affect your content, your branding strategy, etc. And without further ado, I would love to introduce Eric. How are you doing today, bro?
Fantastic. Yeah,
Uh,
thanks so much for having me.
Of course, brother. So yeah, just for people who don't know who you are, why don't you just give a little bit of an elevator pitch, just like explain like your background, how you got into this entire jam, like where your passion for YouTube started, wherever it goes.
Okay, sounds good. So I've been making content for about 5 years now, and probably more seriously in the past 3 years. Before it started out more as a hobby, but now I sort of pretty much do it full time. So right now, what I do is I teach people about their personality patterns. And the way that I do it is I make personality analysis breakdown videos of popular celebrities. And then I teach people about themselves or their personality preferences, their personality patterns using those celebrities so that people can get a fresh lens on themselves or go, oh yeah, wow, that's sort of how my dad is. That's how my brother likes seeing things. That type of stuff is really what I like helping people with. When I first started out though, that is not what my YouTube channel used to be. I feel like there were probably three different phases, three, four, five different phases with the content. I think you caught me a little bit more in the middle there. But I actually think that that would be relevant to sort of what you do, Zach, with your sort of coaching and helping people. One thing that I was thinking about was how when I first started making content, it really was just sort of an experiment. I was like, oh, what if I tried making YouTube videos? But I remember my view of myself. I thought I knew myself pretty well, but it was a very fuzzy picture of myself. When I think back to that time when I thought about how can I stand out, what's special about me, I didn't really have any answers. I didn't think I was very special, and I thought that I was just sort of a normal guy. Maybe I'm younger, in my early 20s, so that might be interesting. I'm a student. Okay, that's still not very unique. I like making videos, I guess, but a lot of people like making video. So it was sort of like I really felt like just a normal guy, and I really didn't think that there was anything that unique about me, which I think is pretty normal for most people starting out, right? I mean, a lot of the people that I'm sure that you've talked to, it's really hard for us people to know what makes them stand out from an outside perspective.
Yes.
But one of the things I wanted to talk with you about was how, I expected that my first year or two was about growing on YouTube and making a brand for myself and all that sort of stuff. But what it ended up being was this really, really powerful self-discovery journey, over that year. My channel, it grew a little bit, maybe to my first 1,000 subscribers or so, which is really cool. But what I ended up getting out of that whole year of uploading was a lot more learning about myself
Mm.
and learning new things about myself, which I think was the most powerful part of the whole process and the most important when you are first starting out making videos. So to make it a little bit more concrete, so for instance, I remember when I first started out, I was just sort of looking at what other people were doing, and other
Mm.
people were making a lot of vlogs at the time. So I was like, okay, well, I'll show what my week's like, and I'll show what my day's like, and me talking with my friends, and me biking around campus, and all that sort of stuff. But after 3 or 4 weeks of doing that, I was like, my day to day is really not that interesting or exciting enough to make a vlog over and over and over and over again. And so I remember there was this one week when I saw this thing on Instagram, and it had this sort of thought provoking question. It was like, do you tend to overwork or underwork? And I was like, huh, that's sort of interesting. I think I'll make a video talking about that. And I started sharing my thoughts on this question, and then other questions that were coming to mind for me because of that question. And suddenly, when I made that video,
Mm.
I suddenly had a whole bunch of my college friends start talking with me, and they're like, I saw your video and I started thinking about it. I hadn't really thought about it like the way that you did. And you're always asking questions. You're always making me think. And I go, really? I guess I sort of do that. I actually really like asking questions and thinking about things differently. I thought that was just normal. I thought everyone does that. But actually, now that I think about it, that's true. That is something that I do all the time. But that was something that was so obvious from an outside perspective, from my friends, from my family, from
Yes.
my whatever. But I really had no clue that
Yes.
that was a thing that I did.
Yeah, if I could just interject on
Yeah.
that one point, it's so powerful. Something I made a video about this a long time ago, and it was called 30 Rules for My Son. And one of the rules was, if you're failing to find your uniqueness, what makes you special, then go out and get a caricature. And it's a really beautiful metaphor that if you go out to the park and you find someone to draw a caricature of you, they're going to bring out those points, that those elements that you never could have noticed in yourself, but it's going to bring out those unique spots. And that's what you did with your friends. Your friends essentially built a caricature of you, things that they were your blind spots, they were uniqueness. But now that you have that art piece that was created for you, that reflection back, now you use that, and that became your brand.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was this again, that's not enough to like solve your YouTube channel and figure things out, but that was like a little breadcrumb, right? And then I think like maybe a month later, there was this YouTuber that I really, really liked. And I was like, wow, he is so interesting and dynamic. I want to make a breakdown of his communication style and what makes him so engaging. And so I made a video and I thought it was just sharing my thoughts and analysis, but other people were going, "Oh my gosh, you really went in depth. How much did you research? Like, how did you notice all this stuff?" I never think about things that way. And I was like, and so people were telling me, and I think I remember I was hanging out with some of these YouTubers and they were going, "Eric Wen, his specialty is analysis." And I was like, really? No, I mean, I'm not so sure about that. Like, I don't know. I guess I analyze a lot, but I never really thought of that as like a thing that I do. And it's so funny thinking back now,
Mm.
5 years, because now that's literally what I do on my channel. But they were able to see that before I did. That's why I think like, the first year or so, making content on YouTube and putting stuff out there consistently, you think at first it's about building an audience and building a brand. And yes, that is important. But actually, one of the most powerful parts of it is actually how you get this mirror to see yourself
Mm.
completely differently from an outside perspective, in ways that, in a way, or you get feedback in a way that you wouldn't normally get. And I really feel like I got like 5 to 10 years of social feedback or awareness, self-awareness, like in that 1.5 years, because of
Wow.
just this dance of like, you make content and then other people go, "I really like the way you think about things, the way you ask questions, the way you analyze, the way you're always making me think," all these sorts of things. And so these things that were super, super obvious to other people, suddenly I was able to see it a little bit more clearly, or from like an outside perspective, in a way that I couldn't before. And so, yeah, I think that was a big part of it. I think, to go on a little bit, I remember there was another big sort of shift, was that I remember I made some videos. And so at that point I was just sort of sharing videos where I was talking about what I was learning about myself and thinking about. I remember I started seeing these comments from around the world, these people I had no idea who they were. And they were like, "Man, I'm in my 40s or 50s and I've never really thought about that," or like that. That's crazy, like how you think about things. And I was like, really? That's so like, other people aren't liking to just analyze themselves and think about what things mean to them and all this. Like, I do that all day long, in my head. And actually, a big shift for me at that time was, at that time I really saw being an introvert as like a weakness. And I
Mm.
also actually saw the analysis thinky side of myself as a weakness as well. Because I would always have these experiences where I was going out and hanging out with friends and they were like in the moment, having fun, like dancing or just chatting and stuff. And I would be floating off into my head, just thinking about stuff. And I would just feel like, why can't I get out of my head? I'm always just thinking, 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 thinking. So I always thought of myself as just this overthinker and can't get out of my head. I viewed those sides of myself actually very negatively, and definitely not positively. Analysis, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing, right?
Right.
And so from making content and sharing myself and then getting the feedback and learning from it a little bit, one huge other powerful side of things was I was able to reframe some of these things that I saw as weaknesses and then suddenly realize how they were strengths. Some things that I thought were normal to me, like completely normal, so normal I didn't even notice them, suddenly those are my strengths. What the heck? And then also some of my weaknesses, some of the things where I'm like, I'm always overthinking things. I'm always, in my head analyzing things so much. Suddenly other people are going, no, that's actually amazing. Like all these insights that you keep coming up with, that's because you're of all these things you're thinking about that other people aren't.
That's
And
so
so,
powerful.
yeah, exactly. And so, I think that even if you don't ever blow up to 1 million subscribers or anything like that, I recommend that if anyone has it's a really creating content is an amazing self-discovery tool that can really change your life.
Yeah.
I just think it's really, really powerful how you can start seeing yourself becoming more self-aware in a completely different way than is normal.
Wow. I have so many questions, Eric. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's so true. Creating content is this spiritual journey of a reflection that at the beginning, when you don't know what your niche is really like your internet potential. Like I don't know what my potential is, so I have to keep on making content, and eventually my potential or my niche gets revealed to me over time. And really, it's just the process of you being more comfortable in your own skin and learning about your different strengths and your weaknesses. And I specifically love so much that your weakness of overthinking ended up becoming your biggest strength because you're overanalyzing everything. That allowed you to be so specific, so exact in all of your videos that people love hearing it when it comes to personality discovery, etc. I did notice one one common theme
Yeah.
that I would love for you to expand on, which a lot of people watching this video right now might be experiencing, which is, my life is just not that interesting. I'm not that special. I'm not important enough, or what I've gone through, my story is not important enough to start making content. My life is boring. Any of those limiting beliefs. How did you get past that? How did you evolve past that? And where are you now? And what kind of advice can you give to people who are stuck in that seat right now?
Hell no. I just think that there's a lot of things. Every single person has things that we completely take for granted. Our upbringing, our values. Do we, what type of socioeconomic experience, like culture back, like all these sorts of things. What types of stories or narratives we had growing up, what types of skills or hobbies that we put into. I agree. I actually think that in some ways, yes, there are a lot of things where we have a lot in common, but it's not just our background, but also, so I mean, like what I specialize in is personality analysis. So from my thinking, it's like, it's not just, okay, you're an engineer or you're a mother, but what's it look like if you're this type of personality mother? What's it look like if you're a mother with this type of personality versus this personality? It's going to look a little different. It's going to express yourself differently. I also think that a lot of times we just have, again, going back to it again, but it's just like we always have all these things that completely we take for granted. So for instance,
Mm,
like, maybe someone that's older looks at me and goes, wow, I really like your young person, fresh perspective on things. And I go, okay, sure, whatever. But then, other people, I don't know if you've seen, but there's a whole bunch of older people or old people from an older generations blowing up on TikTok because they're so unique. There are such outliers on the platform. And so
yes.
literally just by nature of them being a little bit older or having more life experience or wisdom or stuff like that, that's suddenly something that's so normal to them because they're like, hey, I'm just in my 50s, 60s. Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah. I've raised kids. I've whatever. If you're a 20-year-old and you're suddenly hearing these insights or stories or experiences from people that are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, suddenly that's like really unique to them from their perspective. That's very unique. It's really all about just recognizing all the little things that you take for granted. And then
Yes.
the next level is then trying to package it all together in a way that's like shows those strengths or highlights those strengths more clearly.
Another thing to put together with, just putting it all together with, you're saying my weaknesses are my strength and how I discovered that. A lot of people come to me saying that they're too old to start. That's another limiting belief, that they're too old, their life is too boring. All of those things, if they learn how to package that properly and gain enough self-awareness, that also is their strength. Just like what you said, them being older on a platform where it's mostly younger people gives them that niche, gives them that ability to be in that blue ocean versus that red ocean where everyone's like a
Yeah.
millennial or Gen Z or just dancing on camera. I was following this grandmother who's like over 100 years old, and she's just sharing life advice. And just her being 100 years old, every video is getting millions of views because like it's such a niche opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
some other ones that come to mind are like, for instance, maybe people are tired of having the super extroverted, loud, high energy types of videos. So then you coming in with a super calm, not so, high energy stands out suddenly. Or for instance,
Yes.
another one that comes to mind is there's some YouTubers where actually one of their strengths is how their life is not so exciting. It sounds a little bit weird, but some of their strengths are how they really like to keep everything consistent. They're very stable. They really almost like they like to keep things a little bit boring, but it's like sort of cute. It's like sort of adorable how they really put in all this extra time and thought to think things through and do these habits over and over and over again with a consistency and a steadiness that other people
Mm,
wouldn't have. And so actually them being boring is actually like, one of their strengths is actually not
yes.
boring actually, but you know what I mean? Like all these things that we think of as bad things actually often can be reframed to
Yep.
be our strengths.
And by the way, not just that, but the chaos of your life. There's a quote: your mess is your message." All the
Mhm.
craziness that you are going through is so interesting and relatable to other people because everyone thinks that they're the only one going through a particular thing. But eventually you realize that while your soul is unique, your story is not. And that's why I say your story doesn't belong to you, which is a big message in my company, because we have the responsibility to share our story so we can empower people who are going through that problem. But to know that everything you're going through is a
Every single
part,
thing.
every single thing, not just externally, but internally, who you are, your values, your hair color, what your ethnicity is. Just you being Asian puts you in a specific bucket to help specific people. Me being Jewish,
Right.
same thing. And these are our superpowers, and we need to embrace that authenticity and become the best versions of ourselves so that we can help people from an empowered place instead of feeling like we're a victim of our circumstances, because we're not. We're the creators of our life. That's the difference. Okay, good.
100%.
So
Yeah,
we,
I could keep going on and on and on.
yeah,
It's
no,
a
no,
really
we
nice
could,
topic.
yeah, we can keep going on this whole niche idea, but I do want to shift into personality because that is really your area of specialty, and I feel like you can offer so much value to everyone here watching with that. And just before you get too into it, you focus on the Myers-Briggs personality type, right? Or is it other personality ventures as well?
My specialty is Myers-Briggs personality
Okay,
framework, or some people are familiar with like
right.
16personalities.com or anything like that. The version of Myers-Briggs, I will say, the version of Myers-Briggs that most people are familiar with is sort of like the fourth grade version of Myers-Briggs. So, for instance, a lot of people know, oh, I'm a ENFP, I'm a ISTJ, I'm a whatever. But it turns out there's a lot more to it than just you're an introvert or an extrovert, a
Yeah.
thinker or a feeler.
That's what I was going to say. If you could just give people a kind of just a broad understanding, 'cause some people have never even heard of Myers-Briggs, believe it or not. We take that for
Yeah.
granted. So if you could just introduce people into the specialty of personality, like understanding that you teach and you understand, you comprehend, and then use that as a segue into how it can affect your content. So yeah, I'll let you, take over.
Totally. Myers-Briggs, it's a personality type framework, people about their natural preferences. So it and in particular, it has some really interesting insights into how people like to see things and how people like to sort out information. So for instance, you get a whole bunch of people all together on a camping trip but then you ask them all afterwards, what was your favorite part of the camping trip? Or what were you noticing? What was meaningful to you about that camping trip? Even though all 8 people, 10 people, whatever, all went on the same camping trip, everyone will have completely different ways of looking at that same experience. Finding different things meaningful, what they were noticing, whether they were more in their heads or paying attention to outside, whatever. It has some really insights into people's unique lens for the world. And as well, how they like to sort things out and make decisions. So, for instance, you get a whole bunch of people and you have to pick what movie to watch for your group of friends. Everyone's going to go about that decision differently. Some are going to go, well, I'm really excited about this movie. Others are going to go, well, Sally over there is really excited about this movie. So maybe we should do that to prioritize that for her. Other people are going to go, let's just go with what's fair. Let's go. Anyways, everyone has a different way of sorting things out and prioritizing things. And so that's another thing that the personality type framework can help talk about. If
And what are the different
an-
personalities? If you could just kind of like people don't even know like the different 16
yeah,
personalities. Could you just go over a few? Maybe describe yours and describe mine. Mine's obvious. Yours is
yeah,
obvious. So
yeah. So one of the first broad bucket categories that it likes to break things down into, I actually can pull something up on the screen real quick. So the first broad category that people like to sort things out into is extroversion versus introversion. And so this, a lot of people think that it's about how many friends do you have, how many, how much you like going to parties and stuff like that. It actually has nothing to do with social introversion and extroversion. What it actually has to do is how do you direct and receive energy? How do you get energy? Do you get a lot of energy from interacting with the outside world and being a little bit more open and gathering things and taking things in a very open way with the outside world? Or do you get a lot of energy more from going inward and reflecting and concentrating and sort of introspecting and that sort of thing? And in your case, Zach, you are more on the extroverted side. And so that would be an E in your for your personality type. Whereas for me, I'm more on the introverted side. And then in terms of the next category, sensing versus intuition. This is about how do you like to see things? How do you like to look at things? One has a sensing and intuitive side. So everyone needs to pay attention to the concrete information, and everyone needs to think about possibilities and potential sometimes. That's sort of what those two categories are talking about. Sensing is a lot about paying attention to concrete, clear, reliable information that you can experience, that you can touch, that you can, that sort of thing. Whereas intuition, that way of looking at things likes to focus on the possibilities and likes to guess and likes to think about patterns and connections a lot. In our case, both of us lean a little bit more on the intuitive side. So liking to think of those connections and that sort of thing. And then next category or next bucket is thinking versus feeling. This isn't about being like intelligent or like crying in the corner. It's not really about that. It's more, how do you decide and come to conclusions? Do you like to sort things out and judge things in a more unemotional, detached, sort of heady way, in a way that's a little bit more logical? Or do you tend to make decisions and come to conclusions in a more heart, values, social, feelings driven way? And so that's another category that comes to mind. And so in this case, I'm actually a little bit more on the thinking side. So everyone, to be clear, everyone has a thinking side and a feeling side.
Yeah.
Emotions and thinking are both important. But in terms of how we tend to make decisions, we usually have a preference. And so people that are more, I'm a little bit more on the thinking side, like to sort things out sort of unemotionally. And for you, you have a very strong feeling side.
You got it.
And then in terms of the last bucket, judging versus perceiving, how do you approach the outside world? It's sort of how do you like to approach things? And for people that are more on the judging preference, that means that they are a little bit more planned out and actually really like structure, like to add on structure to prioritize order and having things a little bit more under control, a little more organized, versus people that have more of the perceiving function tend to really, really like flexibility and spontaneity, tend to like touching things in a little bit more of an open-ended, casual way. And so again, there's a lot more nuance with all of these different categories. But in terms of a surface level, that's sort of where people's personality, when you hear people talk about, oh, I'm an INFP or I'm an ESJ, these are some of the categories that people are looking for. I forgot, in this case, we are both a little bit more on the perceiving side, so a little bit more on the spontaneous side.
You got it. And as far as your personality, I know I am an ENFP from multiple tests and just talking to you enough to confirm that. But what about you? What would you say you are?
I'm an INTP. So again, the way you look at it is it's like, this is the E. So for you, E, I don't know if you can see my mouse.
Yes, I can still see it. Yeah.
E and F, P. Then for me, it's I N T P. And then
Very
you
cool.
can, and so what you'll see is that there's sort of all of these different combinations of the different letters and personality types based off of those 4 letters that we just talked about. And so here's an example of like all these different combinations.
These are the
and so
16 personalities.
all of them have different sort of tendencies based off of those preferences. For instance, an example that a quick one that because people are like, do I have a personality? Where does this come from? All that sort of stuff. If you think about if you had to write your signature out with your right hand or your dominant hand, and you think about how that would feel to you, usually a lot of people say you can just do it without thinking. It's very automatic. You could do it over and over and over again without really being tired out. On the other hand, usually when I tell people, okay, now try writing out your signature, but with your left hand, your non-dominant hand, start going, no, wait a second. It's like they have to focus a lot. They have to, it's very tiring. It doesn't quite look like them, that sort of thing. And so whenever I talk about personality type stuff, what I'm really talking about is sort of your natural preferences. Everyone can use their right and left hand, but which ways of looking at things are like your right hand, where it's just very easy and you just do it all day. It's very automatic. Whereas other sides of your personality maybe are a little bit more tiring, draining, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And just going back to before where you said everything is kind of on a spectrum, right? Like I talk about masculine and feminine energy a lot with my clients. And, it's important to recognize you're not entirely, even if you're a woman, you can have masculine qualities. If you're a male, you can have feminine qualities. Everyone is on this spectrum. But your center of gravity is in one place. Your center of gravity my center of gravity is extroverted, intuitive, trying to get the rest of them, feeling and perceptive. And exactly. And even though, but I do have judgment. I do have a judging side to me. I do have a thinking side to me. I do have all those sides to me. But the reason it's powerful to go through and get this self-awareness of which 4 letters you gravitate towards is because those are your strengths. That's where you, if you double down on that and you embrace that part of you, that could really, really help you in how you build your brand and how you create content and how you go out into the world as well. So I would love to shift into that. Let's say that someone does get that awareness. Like, what are different personalities and how, like, maybe just choosing a couple examples of like this personality would approach creating content like this, and this personality would approach creating content like this, just to kind of throw that into the world as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way that I look at personality stuff is sometimes it's just about giving us words to describe things that we already know about ourselves. And so just like the earliest example where I was talking about how I really had to make all these videos in order to see myself more clearly from an outside perspective. I think that personality stuff can be it's not everything. Obviously, you have to still make content. You have to get that feedback. You can't skip over that step. But it can be this tool that you can use to suddenly go, oh, this is what being introverted means. It's not saying I'm antisocial. It's not saying that I don't have anything to give to the world. It's not saying that I'm not as cool as the extrovert. It's actually, there's a lot of interesting, powerful, valuable things that I do because I'm more introverted that now I have words to describe without all that stuff. It's like a different way to describe certain strengths that I already have. And so, or just realizing how it's okay to not be like everyone, right? So I always used to beat myself up for being not as organized or sort of doing everything last minute, whatever. And then suddenly learning about the personality type stuff could help me again, reframe things to see ways that's a strength, or I can work in a way that plays a little bit more to my preferences. But for instance, so one thing I want to say is every single personality type can thrive with content. I sort of do this in the back of my head, sort of analyzing people's personalities with their content, sort of stuff like that. And I've seen all 16. It's not like only extroverts can succeed on YouTube or on social media. There's lots of super, super successful introverts as well. And with all the different categories. But I don't know. There's some people where their strength is really paying attention to details and specifics,
Like
and
you.
liking to give context and liking to even more than me. And so they take in information and they like to pay attention to, okay, what's going on, what's happened before, and they gather all the specifics and details and facts, and they can sort of put it together into a little story very clearly. And they don't have any fluff. There's no speculating, really. And they're very clear and concrete. And for me, that type of content would actually be a little bit difficult for me to make because I'm always like jumping off of the details to think about other things that I want to think about, but sometimes there's videos where it's like maybe giving details about finance stuff or giving details about the markets or economic stuff or finances or history stuff. Maybe it's giving people clear instructions for whatever relationships, building something, whatever. In those circumstances, it's actually a really cool strength that you can make things clear for other people. You can just describe things clearly. You can describe things as they are, and you can give things a little bit more, present things in a more concrete or step-by-step way that I actually would really struggle with. On the other hand, there's other people where their superpower is thinking about possibilities. And they're always just going like, what if we did this completely differently? Or what if we, whatever. And then you see their content or the ones where they're usually thriving. And usually you'll see them trying all these ideas that are just ridiculous, absurd. And, what if I built a robot for this? Or what if I, combined this and this thing and just made a funny video about that?
Mm,
That would be maybe a type of video that the more detailed, specific person
yes.
would maybe be a little bit more tired out by.
I think it's really important to bring up a point right now, which is on your journey of creating content, you're going to see a lot of other creators. You're going to see a lot of other people building their brands and doing what you're saying, like a Mark Robber kind of thing, where you're doing like these insane science experiments. And there's you doing personality things, and there's me being like the motivational guy. Like the problem ensues when you are watching someone's content and you are trying to be like, how can I be like that? How can I? And then you're comparing yourself, trying to embrace someone else's strengths, and you're never going to
Right.
sum up to them because you are different. You have different strengths. And the trick is don't look out this way, look. And then once you realize
Yeah.
what your strengths are, then you embrace those because you're not, if he's out there showing the world these crazy science experiments, that's beautiful. That's good. That's his lane. Stay in your lane. Your lane is if you're an introvert,
Something
that's
else.
not, that's,
Yeah.
that's something else. Exactly.
Yeah, I think exactly. So I think it's, yeah, a lot of people try to just model off of what they're seeing. But a lot of times, the people that really succeed on YouTube, on social media, all that sort of stuff, it's actually the people who know themselves best. So, or something I used to do when I was teaching more YouTubers was talking about how a lot of times it takes about 3 years or more to grow or succeed, find some success on YouTube. And people are like, what? That's so long. Oh my gosh, whatever. The thing is, though, is that those 3 years minimum, what that's about isn't because the YouTube algorithm is so difficult to understand or because it's so difficult, impossible to get good lighting or a good microphone or a good camera or whatever. What it actually is the reason it usually takes people a couple of years to grow on social media is because it usually takes about a couple of years to learn who you are, to learn who
Mm,
you are in the
wow.
context of the social media, learn who you are in a more big picture way. And
Yes.
so, and then how to package that in a way where you're playing to your strengths. That's a process that takes a lot of iteration, and a lot of exploration and a lot of trying things. And so, usually, that's what my YouTube channel used to be a lot about is telling people, hey, stop. If you're trying to grow on YouTube, you have to know yourself, and here's how you can analyze yourself, or gives you here's some steps for how you can learn about who you are, so that you can shorten that process of just wandering around in the dark, being like, "Who am I?"
Oh my gosh. It totally brings up this other point, which is, something I always advise to my clients is, and I got this from Mr. Beast. Don't judge yourself until your 100th video. And a lot of people out there are perfectionists and they're trying to put so much production value into each video that they're only putting out one video a month, if even. And it's so important to get that self-awareness, to build that self-discovery, to get data, large amounts of data, a lot of failures, a lot of feedback. And, we have to push ourselves, especially as creators and people who we're trying to display ourselves in a certain way, to like let ourselves put out more quantity over quality. And I would love to, ask you what your opinions are on that in terms of like getting that data over those, to how can we condense that 3 years as much as possible?
It is quantity, but it's not just quantity. It's learning from each time you do it. You have to make sure that you're making stuff and then sort of like exploring a little bit, sort of trying things out a little bit to see what sticks. And then when something sticks or when you get certain feedback, being able to notice that and then iterate from there. So, for instance, like let's say that I made that video where I asked an interesting question. And my friends are like, wow, that's so interesting. You think about things differently and you always ask such interesting questions where I learn about myself. I could have just gone, oh, okay, whatever. But you have to take those little nuggets and you have to notice them and then write them down. I could have kept making vlogs, 100 vlogs, and that actually would have been a waste of time. So it's not just consistency and quantity and making content. It's actually also making sure you're very intentionally exploring a little bit
Mm,
and learning about yourself.
Got it. So you're not just blindly putting out videos, but each time you're in, another metaphor I like to use is like, be a scientist, we're in the lab and you're going out, you're putting a little bit out there. You're seeing how you felt about the format. You're seeing how you felt in terms of like what you were doing and saying. And then you're also looking at the feedback from everyone else. Was there positive feedback? Did other people enjoy it? And then once you find that what you're saying, that there's this like centerfold, there's also like the passion triangle, which I like to teach people, which is what you like doing, what you're good at, but very importantly, don't neglect what the world needs. When you figure out all those three things, that's your niche, but that's also your passion. That's everything. That's what your mission in
Yeah.
life is gonna be.
Yeah, 100%. I think, I think another big piece, the exploration thing is really big. So not being able to go, do I even like making this type of video? You know, or okay, short form videos are the thing right now. That's great, but what would a version of myself look like in a 5-minute video or a 10-minute video, or walking outside or sitting down? You know, like just mix it up a little bit. And I think that usually that's how people can more quickly figure out what's best for them, what they actually
Yeah.
like doing.
Yeah, it's super important. And just going back to the personalities for a second, there's a lot of introverts, a lot of people who they feel like, they don't have as much to say as someone like me, for example, who like I can talk about anything for hours and make stuff up even. But like, how could you approach storytelling, creating content and all that jam and building a brand as someone who is more of a quiet person in real life?
I think it's this mix, because I don't want to just say that presentation doesn't matter. Obviously, when you make content, you have to learn how to project your voice a certain way, or you don't have to, but like it helps to learn how to speak up a little bit. You can't be mumbling all the time, or to, you just start learning little things to have better communication, which is what you sort of are amazing at, people, Zach. But at the same time, though, I think just raising that, there's a lot of power that can come from, a lot of times people that are a little bit more quieter, sometimes they really are good at thinking to themselves about who they are, and like knowing themselves. And so they have sometimes a self-awareness or a very strong individualist perspective that other people are like, yeah, I'm so busy running around doing stuff that I've never really thought about who I am. And you, who maybe are a little bit more on the introverted side, have some interesting insights on that. I think also some people, they can relate a little bit more to some of the people who aren't just talking super fast and loud all the time. That's actually something I need to remind myself of. I'm in my videos now, I always keep doing it where I keep turning my energy up. I'm like, I'll be boring if I'm talking more normally. So I always have to keep reminding myself as well. They're actually in real life. If I was thinking about how I would be if I was in a coffee shop or out in normal life, people would still accept me and understand me if I talked a little bit just in a more peaceful,
Right.
way. They're not going to like shun me. They're not going to hate me. They're not going to all this sort of stuff.
Wow.
It's a lot about self-acceptance, actually.
Oh my
Self-acceptance
gosh.
is really the key to it all. It's like that's basically what we've been talking about this whole day. Is just like all the different personalities can work on YouTube. There's so many different formats that can work on YouTube. There's so many different stories that can work on YouTube. There's so many different types of storytelling that can work on YouTube. But what you really need to do to make an impact and grow and to sort of hit your own flow is for you to know yourself and to accept yourself, so that you can then package yourself in a way that makes sense for other people, or it's very rolling for other people.
I love this so much because you're just further expounding on the fact that creating content and building it's like one of the most personal discovery development tools we have. It's a spiritual experience, going out and learning about yourself, but also the second part, which is so fundamental, self-acceptance and appreciating you and realizing that you are enough just the way you are. Your story is important. Your personality is interesting. And another really powerful thing that, I wasn't mentioned yet is your vibe attracts your tribe. And me being energetic and enthusiastic and out loud, that's going to attract a certain kind of audience. Being quiet and being more analytical, that's going to attract a certain kind of audience. People
Right.
who are very, very thinking and want to see a lot of data and graphs, they're not going to enjoy my content because I'm very emotional in the way I'm a motivational guy. I'm like, I push, but that's okay. I'm not here to change everyone in the world's life. I'm here to change my niche's life. And you're here to change your niche's life. And the way we bring this oneness to the world back together is by everyone embracing their unique niche and helping the people they can serve the most. And if everyone can just help at least one person that they're equipped to help, the world's going to be a fundamentally better place. And that's kind of
Yeah.
how I see it. Yeah.
100%. And that's what makes me really passionate about creating content. It's not just about getting views or, making money, even though that's obviously like a really special, cool part where you can share your passion and make an impact and make money. But one of my favorite parts is that self-discovery. Like I'm always learning. I always thought, oh, when I hit 50,000 subs or 5,000 subs or whatever, that's when I've like really cracked the code and made it. But no, I'm like always feeling like I have so much more to learn. I have new ways to communicate, new formats I want to try, new business things I want to learn about. There's always so much to learn. And I think it's that type of mindset that helps people keep going and going and going with what passion they're pursuing, whether that's social creating content or something else. It's like, do you
Yes.
like it? Do you actually find it interesting? And are you actually growing? I think people are attracted most people are attracted to growing. So it's like thinking about, is this something that's actually making you grow?
I love that so much, Eric. This has been such a beautiful conversation, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise with everyone. And before, we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you two additional questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Amazing. So the first question is for someone in this right now who is at the very, very beginning of their journey. If you could rewind yourself and imagining like you didn't have all the self-awareness you have today, you didn't have all those reps in the gym, what advice can you give them to help them get started and progress on their journey? And it could be advice, it could be encouragement, just anything that you really feel would have helped you starting out. That's question one.
I think it's really the first part is just making a commitment to yourself to be consistent, and then finding a way to following through on that consistency part in the beginning is really the most important part. I think maybe if you're scared of how your friends and whatever are going to receive you, just make another account, but make a commitment to yourself. I'm going to post every single couple days a little talking video on this page. I'm going to do it every week. Or I'm going to do it every 2 days. I'm going to whatever. And say for a year or for try to do it for longer than 3 months. I would say 3 months is usually that barrier that really messes everyone. I think most of the people I started with, I think already like 80% of them did not make it past 2 months. And so if you're able to make it past that 2 month point, you're already like in the top 15, 20%. And then if you're able to make it a year, you're already like a rock star, So.
It's so funny you said that, Eric, because the way I designed my program is at exactly 90 days. So, it's a boot camp to get people ramped up and consistent for 90 days. Because you're right. Once you hit 90 days, you've built a strong habit. You built a new identity for yourself. It's a muscle. And all you do is just keep on showing up to the gym. For me, going to the gym is like brushing my teeth at this point, and so is making videos. But it wasn't always like that. Eventually, at the beginning, it's like nails against the chalkboard. It's like very, very against your nature, but you're building it into your nature. But now for you too, like staying consistent isn't difficult. It's just another part of your day.
Yeah. I mean, being honest, I think that it still is difficult, but it's difficult in many ways. There's always we always need to push ourselves. And, but I will say I did want to throw in though, I remember a really impactful thing that I did about 6 months into making videos is I thought of this challenge. I was always doing this thing where I would be refilming things over and over and over again, perfecting things and really getting in my head about pauses or all that sort of stuff. And so I gave myself this challenge one of the weeks when I was starting out. It was called like a one take vlog. And it was basically think about what you want to say. And I gave myself permission I can rehearse it as many times as I want beforehand. So when I was driving in the car, I would just sort of say it. Or when I was walking, I would say it. And I could, all that sort of stuff, I would say it. But the promise that I made to myself was once I hit record for that specific video, whatever came out in that thing, that's what I would post. So
That's a great idea.
even if there were pauses, even if there were parts where I lost my train of thought and I felt like naked, I was just like, oh, I can't post it. Like, how am I going to, I want to edit that out or I want to redo it. I want to, all this sort of stuff. But I forced myself to go, It's okay. That's the whole point of this experiment. And I remember doing it, and it made a really big impact. And I think actually it inspired like 25 to 30 people around the world to also try doing a similar thing because they just really appreciated that vulnerability and authenticity. And I think that was a little bit of a turning point for me to realize that some of those imperfections are okay. It helped me overthink things a lot less. And it's actually something maybe I might want to try doing again sometime because it was a really, really, I need those more now. And I just remember that was like a really big turning point for me when I
It's a
realized
beautiful
that
idea.
it was okay to have those pauses. And it's really not the end of the world if people see you gather your thoughts a little bit.
Yeah, it's normal. And I'm going to post this podcast essentially unedited. I might make it the audio a little bit more crisp, but this is human interaction, and we need to like let people have attention spans again and realize like it's okay to think. What we want to work on is the ums, and also like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Like, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, but you also like, it's okay to think. It's okay to figure out what you're going to say. And I love that you put the pressure on yourself. Once you hit record, that's it. It's a beautiful exercise. And I honestly might even borrow it from my clients. So you're the best, Eric.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that
That's
idea.
awesome.
Okay, good. And the last question I wanted to ask you is, Eric, what's your message to the world? What do you stand for? And if you could leave this world with one thing at
Whoa.
this stage in your life, what is it?
Let me think about that for a second.
There we go. Thinking time. This is good.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I like saying at the end of every single one of my videos is you are the change maker of your own life. Let's think more deeply, which is basically this idea of, you are the one who creates the change in your life. And I just think that it's all the stuff that we talked about by thinking more deeply, which from my view is all about knowing yourself, learning about yourself, trying to, that's how you can be an even better change maker in this world. And so that's something that I'm literally obsessed with. That's literally what my work is nerding out about personality stuff because I love teaching people about their personality patterns. Because I really think that, so, okay, now it all came together. I think by knowing ourselves better, we can be really amazing change makers in this world. And that's what can help us have better connections and relationships in our life and really be a happier, more self-accepting version of ourselves.
So beautiful,
it all
Eric.
starts with knowing ourselves.
Thank you so much, Eric, so much for this educational value add, for sharing your expertise and how we can use our personalities to our advantage, how we can use our weaknesses, with quotes, as our strengths, and how we can use that to be successful. And I will leave your contact information or like your YouTube channel, whatever, in the description or in the comments, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, it's just Eric Wen on YouTube, WEN. And then if people ever wanted a teaching session for learning about their personality in depth, learning about their personality patterns, I have these little mini programs that I offer to people or small groups where it's just, it's like 3 to 4 sessions, but like just to give people a little mini masterclass on what their personality is and what their strengths and blind spots, that sort of stuff is. And so if people are interested in that, just send me an email, which is ericwen@thinkmoredeeply.com.
Amazing. And if you are interested in building your authentic brand, then we can have a chat. Just go to my website at buildatraitcoaching.com. And if you go to apply now, then you can just fill in some information and we'll be on a call shortly. I hope you have the most amazing day. Thank you so much, Eric, for being here today with me, and have an incredible, incredible rest of your day.